Welcome tonight to the Willmar Area League of Women Voters Candidates Forum. And tonight we're so fortunate to have the candidates for our county sheriff here with us. Both of them will be spending an hour answering questions as we have received them from our website as well as from our audience tonight. I want all of you out in the community to know that tonight's forum is live on channel 189, live right now on channel 189, and live streamed on the City of Willmar website. So I hope you enjoy the coming hour. My name is Andrea Piskey. I've been a longtime member of the League of Women Voters, and I'm happy to be the moderator tonight. We have several candidates forums upcoming throughout the month, and we hope that you will join us for each Tuesday coming up. The order of business tonight is each of our candidates will have 2 minutes to provide an opening statement. We then will begin questions, and they will alternate back and forth. We have questions that will then be answered within a 90-second period of time. And at about 10 to 8, we will ask for closing remarks of both of them. So let's get started. Our 2 candidates are Greg Steen and Eric Holine, and we're happy to have them with us tonight. And we will ask them for opening statement. We'll begin with Greg.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to say welcome to everybody and thanks for being here tonight. And I really look forward to our conversation. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce my wife this year, Ann. We've been married for 28 years and we have 2 daughters, Hannah and Shelby. Both of them are out of college and in the workforce now. We also have a son-in-law, Elliot, who is in law enforcement as well. I'm originally from Appleton, Minnesota. However, I primarily grew up in the Chicago and Houston, Texas area. I would like to mention that actually our family lived in Cairo, Egypt for a couple of years when I was younger as well. After high school, I moved back up here to moved back up to Minnesota, and I went to school at Willmar Community College. I then went on to Mankato State University, where I finished up my degree in criminal justice. My first job in law enforcement was in Stevens County up in Morris, Minnesota. In a smaller department like that, we had to handle our cases from start to finish. And as a result of that, I gained a lot of experience and training in the area of investigation and prevention work. In 1996, I moved down here to Kandiyohi County, where I've been working ever since. I have held positions in the sheriff's office here as a road deputy, as an investigator, as a patrol sergeant, captain and jail administrator, and now my most current position, which is Chief Deputy of the Sheriff's Office. I also have been supervising the day-to-day operations of the dispatch center for the past 10 years as well. With my experience in administration at the Sheriff's Office for the past 11 years, I've got a lot of dealings with working with the budgetary items, personnel management, and then also policies and procedures. I'm running for sheriff because I'm deeply committed to the safety and the well-being of everyone in our community. Enforcement and prevention efforts, staff support, and community involvement will be some of my top priorities for our future. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Holine.
I'm Eric Holine. I'm running for Kandiyohi County Sheriff. Joined here tonight by my wife, Julie Holine, been married 21 years. We also have 2 daughters, Hannah, who is 13, as well as Haley, who is 17, going to be 18 here in October. We are Willmar area residents as well. We have lived in Kandiyohi County since 2002. And prior to that, just so you kind of understand my background, I served in the U.S. Army immediately after high school and served 2 years in the Army after being deployed to Operation Joint Endeavor as one of the first units in Bosnia on a peacekeeping mission. I then joined the Minnesota National Guard out of Alexandria, Minnesota, while attending Alexandria Community and Technical College. Got my AAS degree in law enforcement from Alexandria Community Technical College. While doing that, I also worked in different security fields where I was also supervisors within those fields. 2000, I ended up working for city of Cosmos, where I served as well for 2 years as the chief of police in Cosmos, as well doing administrative stuff, budgetary things, as well as employee discipline and things like that as well. After 2002, I came here to Kaneohe County. When you look at Kaneohe County, I have a vast variety of leadership experience. When we talk about leadership versus boss mentality, leadership experience, what I have done at Kaneohe County is a corporal and patrol division, as well as the SWAT team leader from 2013 to 2018, assistant SWAT team leader from 2003 to 2013. I was also a field training officer for new officers and as well use of force trainer. So I have done things where people look up to my positions and titles as leadership and continue to guide people along the way, as well own 2 businesses here locally since I've been running one since 2012 and successfully and gradually keep expanding that business itself. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. So we'll begin with the first question, and Mr. Holeen will have that opportunity to answer the first question, and then afterwards, Mr. Steen. What will be some of your priorities when you become sheriff?
When you look at the priorities, for those of you that I've been talking to in the communities, I came up with a 4-year plan for the sheriff's office as far as what I see where we need to go. And they're initiatives that I have. What you'll see after tonight, I'll post the initiatives on my webpage as well as my Facebook page. So I encourage you to go out there and look into these. I've got community policing initiatives, crime prevention initiatives, traffic safety initiatives, as well as some of the other things that I have is jail safety. And with the jail safety, I also have some dispatch things that I'm looking to expand on as far as the safety or expanded controls for dispatch, as well as expanded training for investigations. I see some of the things that we need help in, and one of the big areas that I'm going to look at doing is rebuilding our relationship with our community members. We have been disconnected from our community, and we have forgotten the people that we have served, and therefore I want to get back into those communities. So I have community initiatives that I'm looking to do as far as how to get into those, as well as crime prevention initiatives. All those will build good, positive relationship between citizens and our law enforcement community as well. So then that way you're more likely to come to me when you have an issue or a problem, rather than just if you were relying on calling dispatch or law enforcement, you might not make that connection or reach out to us. Whereas making those positive connections, you're more likely to do that.
And Mr. Steen, would you
Yes.
like me to word the question? Okay.
Yeah.
What will be some of your priorities when you become sheriff?
Okay. Well, first of all, some of my priorities are going to fall into the realm of prevention and enforcement, and that would encompass the areas of the C6 Drug Task Force, also our TZD program, which is Towards Zero Death. We've had a lot of success in those areas over the years. The task force is having a great deal of success working and establishing informants and dealing with the drug issues that we have in our community. So we will be continuing to support them in both financially and also as far as training goes. The TZD program, Towards Zero Death, that's a traffic enforcement initiative. And we're going to continue to work in that area because over the past 20 years, we have reduced our fatality rates in Kaneohe County from 10 to 15 fatalities a year back in 1998, all the way down to about 1 to 5 fatalities per year now. And more importantly, across the state of Minnesota, we have reduced fatalities from, I believe it's about 650 back in 1998 to 357, I believe, last year, which is one of the lowest totals since 1946, I believe, or 1943. The other thing is I want to continue to work on staff development, and I also want to continue to work on community outreach, which we initiated the Triad program, which is a senior safety program, and we're very, very actively involved with that. And the main fuel behind that is our fraud and scam cases that are going on, and our seniors are being specifically targeted, and we want to work with them on that. Thank you.
The next question, and we'll get the response from Mr. Steen first. In your opinion, what is the current morale like at the sheriff's office, and what will you do to either maintain or improve that morale?
Well, in my opinion, the morale at the department is good. I realize that there are things going on, especially in a campaign season like this. We have things that surface that have been of interest to me. And I plan to take note of some of the things that have been brought up to my attention, whether it's scheduling or shifts or different things like that. I plan to take note of that and to work on that when hopefully when I'm elected. So the other thing that I really want to work on is staff development. I really want to work on focusing on people's strengths and their abilities, because I think when we can tap that resource from them and they feel like they're doing a good job with the work that they're doing, they are going to be better employees. And when they're better employees, it creates a better atmosphere all by itself. So I really want to work on the staff development piece, and I think that is important. Not exactly sure how we're going to go about that, but at this point, I just know we need to have the discussions about what's important to people. We have done studies in the past at the sheriff's office about things that are, what we may be lacking in and what we are doing really well. And we'll continue to feed off of that research that we've gotten. That was about 2 years ago. So I would start with that and then kind of modify and move along from that point on. Thank you.
And Mr. Helene, would you like me to read the question again?
No, I'm good.
Very good.
Okay. As far as the morale, I can tell you as someone who came from the patrol side and before leaving the sheriff's office in January, that the morale is low. My opinion, the morale is probably the lowest it's been since I've been employed there. And there's different factors as to why that is occurring. And one of the biggest things is leadership. When you look at leadership, and we got to change the way that we administrate to our employees. And so I'm going to use a team leadership model. And when you use a team leadership model, what it does is, even though I might have an idea or a concept, as good as I may think it might be, there's someone out there that might have a piece of information or something better to add to it, tweak it and make it better. And when we give ownership back to the people that we work with, it makes them feel like a valued member of the team. And what I want them to understand is that they are a valued member of the team and their input counts. And I want them to come forth with all the possible ideas that they have to make the agency better. Because when we make the agency better for ourselves, it gets better for you, the citizens. And that's my ultimate goal.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Another question for Mr. Helene. What steps will you take to increase diversity in county law enforcement so its demographic is more reflective of women and minority populations in our county?
Well, we've kind of addressed this before in the primaries, and one of the big things that I think we need to do is we need to do a better job of recruiting and retention. And when we look at recruiting, some of those things we might have to try and recruit people of diversity as well as women, since you mentioned that particular area, and making sure that we get those good quality candidates that come in as well. With that being said, what we're also looking for is we need to have a liaison position or something where we can reach out to the communities that are what we consider diverse here in Willmar. When we look at the Latino Spanish communities as well as the Somali communities, we haven't done a really good job of reaching out to these communities. And I've made a promise as part of my campaign to do that. I've reached out to the Latino community. I've reached out to the Somali community. I've been out in these communities, talking with them, trying to figure out how can we better serve you. And I think that's what we need to do. They're part of the community. They're going to be here. As politicians and chief law enforcement officers, we have to understand where they come from, what their ideals are, so that we can better serve them and better integrate them as well as integrate us with them.
Thank you. Christine.
Okay, well, first of all, currently right now in the sheriff's office, we do have 3 women working in our force in the sheriff's office. As far as reaching out to the minorities and having a better demographic at the sheriff's office, I think one of the things that we could look at doing is something that the police department's actually doing. And that is they have the cadets, or I can't remember what they're called for sure right off the top of my head now, but they are working with the youth that are in the high schools and getting them used to or teaching them about law enforcement and maybe, spurring some ideas or thoughts if they're interested in that. And I think that would be a great opportunity for us to have more communication with the police department on that and be able to get in and talk about what the sheriff's office does too, because there's quite a difference between what the sheriff's office does and the police department. But I have seen that program that they're doing, and I like that because they are definitely getting people involved with the process. We are seeing our numbers drop overall. Whenever we open up our to hire people, we only probably end up with 10, 12, applications. And so the market out there is dwindling, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And so we need to focus on that. And that's what I would like to do, is to venture out into that area to see if we can start working on a program like that as well.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Steen. What is the role of sheriff administering the Kandiyohi County Jail?
Well, the role of the sheriff is to maintain that the jail is being adequately staffed, that the jail, that the prisoners that are being held at the jail are being properly treated. Basically, the budgetary items for the jail, making sure that there's proper amount of money to keep the jail running, I think is part of what the sheriff is responsible for the jail. The jail is really governed by the Department of Corrections. And so we work closely with the Department of Corrections to make sure that we are operating at the proper staffing levels and that we have the proper amount of people on at given times, and that, so there's a huge amount of things that come into play when it comes to running the jail. And, off the top of my head, I just think that, the jail is, it's got over a $5 million budget on top of, the sheriff's office total budget is over $11 million. So from a financial standpoint, there's a lot, personnel, there's a lot of stuff that goes on and that we are involved with and that we have to deal with in the jail. And I think it's running smoothly right now. I know there's some issues perhaps with the scheduling, I think, but we're definitely going to take a look at that as well. And that falls under the realm of the sheriff as well.
Thank you. Mr. Holeen.
And Greg had touched on many things, budget, personnel, things like that. One of the other things that I will also address, though, is the health and safety of inmates as well as the jailers itself. So when we look at some of the things that we need to do or need to be doing better, is increasing our staff numbers. Greg also talked about the DOC and how they oversee the facility itself. There's also things that are occurring within the jail currently because of those shortcomings, staff, as well as the hours or work schedule. And we run a risk sometimes of potentially losing some of those contracts because of some of the violations that we may have. And I don't want to see that happen within our facility. So I'm going to work hard to make sure that, one, we're not just running the jail as a for-profit business. The jail is there to serve the community, serve the inmates, as well as serve the staff. So we need to, one, increase the staff numbers to make sure that it's a safe location for them to be. When we look at the health side of things, I know we contract within the jail for some of our health care. What I would like to see is contracting with a health provider that also provides aftercare when they get outside the jail, whether it's Centricare, Caris Health, or whoever that wants to step in and do that kind of stuff. So we're not just worried about while they're with us. What are we going to do for them after?
Thank you. Next question for Mr. Holeen. What could you do in partnership with our schools to make sure that children are safe at school?
Okay. When you look at safe schools, I'm lucky enough as a business owner of Great Lakes Training Group. I also teach through what used to be Pert and Associates, a school safety and healthy children's program. That school safety and healthy children's program that I went to was from St. Louis, Missouri. And one of the things that we talked about heavily was identifying certain behaviors or indicators that indicate someone who's likely to be assaultive, as well as someone who might be mentally unstable, up to active shooter or violent person. When we look at school safety and things like that, I have offered training to every school in the county, as well as other locations outside of our county for this. And I'm also an active shooter instructor trainer for Alexandria Technical and Community College at the Customized Training Center. So I understand the school safety dilemmas as well as the dynamics that go along with that. And what we can do is one of the things that I would like to see as a sheriff's office, because we always have a tendency to do our work inside the office. I would like to see a substation in every school that we have outside line areas so that our officers can go in there, do their reports, et cetera, not have to run back to Wilmer to do their reports, get people inside these schools and make you guess as to whether an armed person's there or not. So I would like to see those programs implemented, and those are programs that would cost us absolutely nothing to do.
Thank you. Mr. Steen.
Okay, well, first of all, at our school, I'm going to speak to outside the county because Wilmer has SROs, or school resource officers, in most, if not all, their schools. We do have an SRO officer in the New Spicer School, and that individual has been in contact with the other schools in our district, such as down in the Princeburg area, also Raymond, and I believe Atwater, Grove City is kind of covered by Meeker County. But we have made contact with their schools just to ensure that their safety plans are in place, their emergency safety plans are in place to deal with situations or crisis situations such as an active shooter. We are actually currently training, starting, I believe, next week. There'll be some information coming out up at the New London Spicer School on the ALICE training, which is Alert, Lockdown, Information, Counter, and Education. And so our SRO up there, Dave Holmquist, is going to be working with the staff up there. And then we are planning to bring that information also down to the school down in Raymond and specifically down in Princeburg as well. And we'll make connections with the other schools as well, just to make sure everybody's covered. However, I would like to point out that this is just something to make sure that that the schools have these processes in place and to make sure it's consistent so that we know what to expect from a law enforcement standpoint. Law enforcement we do active shooter training, and we are very well versed in that area and able to respond to situations that occur, not just in schools, but in other areas where it might happen. Thank you.
Question for Mr. Steen. Please discuss your ideas for helping victims of opioid addiction and stopping the flow of opioids into our communities in the county.
Well, first of all, I'm very much aware of the fact that our Drug Free Community Coalition just received a grant for $50,000, I believe, for 3 years. So we already have a group of people working in our community that is trying to address some of these issues that are going on. I would like to mention also that the opioid issue is definitely a crisis, but we also have alarming trends in the area of methamphetamine as well. So we can't forget about some of the other things that are going on as well. And the Drug Free Community Coalition works on those different things. As far as the Drug Task Force is also very much aware of the issues with the opioid addictions, which lead to the usage of heroin. We are prepared with Narcan in all of our squad cars. EMS also has Narcan as well to counteract the effects of a heroin overdose. So I think that we're doing a pretty good job in that area. And I think it's just important to remember that we do a lot of prevention work, and hopefully that will try to swing or turn the tide on some of these things that are happening. We also provide the drug box at the sheriff's office, which people can dispose of medications properly, which is very important. I do not have how many pounds we have destroyed over the years, but it's a lot. And we haul drugs up to Alexandria for incineration at least twice a year. Thank you.
Mr. Holeen.
When you look at the opioid crisis, I've got a 10-point plan that I put out there as far as how to, us as chief law enforcement officers, how to address the opioid issues. One of the big things that we got to understand is when we talk about opioid, we're not just talking about heroin. A lot of people think we're talking about hard drugs here and it's heroin. No, it's a lot of your over-the-counter medications that you're receiving from your doctors. And those prescriptions are being abused and used. Also as well being stolen. So when we look at some of these issues that are occurring, one, it starts in K-12. So we need to do our education at a young age. DARE right now has an opioid K through 12, as well as a RX training that they do provide for our kids K through 12. And it's something that we need to implement, make sure that we're using. Not only that, when we look at the 10-point plan, I put that 10-point plan out just before the end of the primaries here in the last go around. But what I can do is also step up along with the Drug-Free Coalition, provide assistance as well as our position that we hold to better assist them to get people to understand the importance of the opioid crisis. When we look at meth, because Greg talks about the meth use, anytime that we have a high indication of meth use, that also indicates that there's a high opioid issue. Meth is a second drug of choice for someone who has an opioid issue. If they cannot get the drugs that they're seeking, they will go to another form, which meth happens to be that form. So if we have that high indication here, we probably have a high indication of a opioid issue.
Thank you. Next question, beginning with Mr. Helene. Having an open line of communication with employees you supervise is very important. How will you keep the communication line open and have employees feel comfortable approaching you?
Well, I think one of the good things that even Sheriff Hartog has always done is he's kept the open door policy, and he's allowed people to come in and talk to them and address whatever shortcomings that they have. One of the things that I want to make sure that I do, and whether it's employees as well as citizens, I'm going to have my work schedule put out there. I'm going to put it right on the web so everybody knows when I'm around, etc. I'm always free to talk to. When we also look at the team leadership model, that will increase hopefully the communication flow that's going on between myself as well as the employees. And by people understanding that I might have an idea, and I also understand that it may be a good idea in my mind, I'm looking for you to help make it better. And you, the employee, once you feel appreciated and trust me, you're more likely to reach out to me. Even though I'm the chief law enforcement officer and you might have to do corrective actions on these people sometimes, they're going to be more likely to come and speak to you and talk to you and engage you. And that's what I want. And I'll continue to do that with the way that I lead. Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Steen.
Okay, as far as maintaining open line of communication with employees, I would like to say I do a pretty good job of that right now, and that's just by having general conversations with them, seeking feedback from them on how a call was handled or how their weekend went. Different things like that can really just make people feel comfortable telling you, how they're feeling about what's going on at work, or if there's something bothering them, because that's a big concern for me. That is something that I really try to monitor and watch out for when I know that we have had employees that have seen some pretty serious things happen, or tragedies, I would say, and I've witnessed them myself, so I kind of know what I feel like. So it's important to reach out and touch and make communication with those people. The other thing that I want to do, or I like to do, is to communicate with them about their strengths. Tell me what your passion is. What is it that you're passionate about with this work? I mean, why did you go into this work? And when people can tell you about that, it's a lot easier for you to help mold and shape them in the direction where they feel like they're doing satisfactory work, or they feel like they're accomplishing something and making a difference. I mean, believe it or not, when we ask the question, why do you go into law enforcement? A lot of people say, I just want to make a difference in the world. And the reality is that's true. That's what they want to do. They just don't know what it is. And so it's important for us to seek that out and get them to identify what it is, to continue to work forward and to do a good job for not only the office, but also the community that they serve.
Thank you. Mr. Helene.
I answered that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the question right here. Sorry. For you. I should go Mr. Steen for this one. This happens to me every time.
That's okay.
I do this. So, what is your position on the current use of body cams in Kandiyohi County law enforcement, your own personal position?
Well, I can speak from experience dealing with personnel matters where we might have a complaint that's filed against the deputy for something that they did or did not do. And so I really feel that the body cameras are going to be a successful tool for us to use. However, there's a lot of baggage that comes with them, and we have to figure out how we're going to store all the data and the process itself. We're rolling them out right now. We have approximately, I think counted yesterday, 8 of them out on the road right now. And so we're kind of working out the kinks with these right now and making sure that they're downloading properly and we're getting the information, because as soon as we don't have that information for the public, they're going to think we're hiding something, and we want to make sure that things are rolling out smoothly. And so my position is that they are a good tool to have when they're working. And it's important for the public to understand that there may be times when they aren't working. And we are under the understanding that, I mean, just the other night, body cameras shut off when a taser was deployed. So the electronic interference caused the body camera to shut off, something we didn't know. So that's one thing we need to work on. These and in-squad cameras have cleared deputies on complaint calls. Not that there's a lot of them, but they have cleared them. And so I really feel they're going to be a useful tool in the future to help our officers out on the street.
Thank you. Mr. Helene.
Coming from two agencies that, I'll let you get that reset. Okay. Coming from two agencies that use body cams, Meeker County as well as Lower Sioux Tribal Police, I actively and have regularly used those since I started with them back in January. I think they're a great tool. And the reason why I say they're a great tool is it gives a, as close as possible, point of view what the officer is seeing. Not that it paints a 3D picture for everybody. That's why you got to understand when we do police cam video, the police cam along with the police officer's report is very important. And the reason for that is that it paints a whole picture as to what's going on for you, the person from the outside looking in. Because there's certain senses that they're seeing and using that you don't get the benefits of using. So they are a great tool. When we look at different things that have occurred, body cams in and of itself, the nice thing about the body cam, it doesn't have to necessarily be sunk with the squad car camera, although it is nice when it is. And the reason for that is because then I have a squad car camera as well as a point of view from the officer. So it ties everything together from the time we leave the squad car to the time we clear the call from the person. The hard thing is they are activated by the officer itself. There may be times that we may not be able to get those activated in time for a critical incident, whatever the case may be, and that might not be there. The hard part is for citizens to understand that it is a tool. It is a great tool, and hopefully it's something that will better assist us. And we can use that majority of the time to clear the officers of any perceived wrongdoing.
Thank you. Now to begin with Mr. Helene. How would you prepare your officers to deal with people experiencing mental health crises?
When we look at, we've had a crisis intervention training before at the sheriff's office, and I think that's probably one of the best tools that we can use for crisis intervention. One of the other things that we would also, or I would like to see, is a couple different steps. De-escalation training as well as verbal judo. The reason for that, when we look at most of the time when we deal with someone with mental health, law enforcement is not trained necessarily to the best to deal with mental health issues. And a lot of times we end up arresting or using force on someone that has mental health issues because we don't understand what's going on. And there's a lot of times it's easier to use force, arrest them and put them in jail than it is to try and hear them out to find out what their problem is and talk them down. So when we look at some of the things that we have to do is de-escalation training and crisis training, and understand, and the officers need to understand, I don't expect you to have this scenario over in 3 minutes and back on the road. If it takes an hour, it takes an hour. The most important thing is the health and the care of the person that you're dealing with. Get them the proper care that they need. And that might mean spending a little extra time with them versus short periods of time and usually a misuse of force or extremer use of force.
Thank you. Mr. Steen.
Okay, I'm going to try to get two things in here in 90 seconds. First of all, I want to tell you a quick story about the jail. Several years ago, we had an individual in the jail that was suffering greatly from mental health issue. And we knew that the individual needed to be moved out of the jail, but there's a process for that. And there were several staff members at the jail were very concerned about the health and well-being of that individual. And it took a long time to get that person to the place that they needed to be. And I knew at that time that we needed to make some changes with what we were doing. So I established a mental health crisis team that consisted of the charging authority, which is the county attorney. It consisted of family services. It consisted of a psychologist. It consisted of the sheriff and the jail administrator, which was me at the time. And we put that team together to expedite the process to get the individuals out of the jail into the proper facility. That's the first story I want to tell you. The second thing I want to mention to you is that the training that we have in mental health is increasing. The Post Board is, as part of the mandatory training that the Post Board is requiring of anybody with a peace officer's license, they are required to have an additional certain amount of hours for their licensing period, and that is in effect now. I've actually just renewed my license, so I'll have to be going through this particular mental health training that qualifies. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the curriculum is for that, because we have some deputies going up to the Brainerd area here in the next few weeks, in November, I believe, for 2 days of training. So I'm very interested to see what that is. And the main thing with mental health cases right now is that we have a great deal of, we're lacking resources.
Very good. Thank you.
Hmm?
The next question, to begin with Mr. Steen. What are your initiatives involving help for victims of human trafficking?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. We actually had a training today at the Law Enforcement Center. We're training several people in the community, whether it's through family services or Safe Avenues. There's a whole bunch of people that are attending what we call Human Trafficking 101 training. It's a 4-hour class. We had some training in May. We just had a training again today. So there's 2 sessions that went through. This is part of a grant that we received, and for human trafficking specifically. And it's to make people aware of some of the things that they can look for and be aware of out in the community. The other thing is that I'm actively involved with the Human Trafficking Task Force. And I would just like to say that I think we're doing a really good job for what we know anyways. And we will continuously make improvements to what it is that we're doing as time goes on. We are broke down into 3 different categories with the Human Trafficking Task Force. One is the outreach portion of the human trafficking task force. The other is the response group, and the other is the enforcement group. So the enforcement group consists of law enforcement. The response group is the people that are coming up with ways to deal with victims, and that's not an easy thing to do. And we're actually focusing on certain things that we have seen in the community that we think might be trafficking issues, such as truancy issues in school, runaways, and we're developing questionnaires for officers to ask out in the field to see if we perhaps have somebody that's being trafficked.
Mr. Helene.
The nice thing about working for the Lower Sioux Tribal Police is, as many of you know, Redwood Falls and Lower Sioux Tribal Police were actually one of the first ones who started doing the human trafficking stings in this area. So when you look at that training, it has been based off of the Lower Sioux's model. And kind of what was going on there. And Greg talked about the three different resources that we need to have. And one of the biggest ones that is an issue is the financing of how do we take care of the victim in the case, and how do we get them broken from the cycle of abuse and everything else that goes along with the trade of human trafficking. So when you look at some of the things that need to happen is we got to have the education and training, which means we have to have an outreach with the citizens in and of itself, so you can understand what's going on and hopefully see some of the behaviors that are indicative of that type of behavior. And then not only that, for these people to understand that we're coming into contact with, yes, there is an enforcement side of things, and we will do enforcement, definitely. But there is truly a victim in some of this. So we can't forget the fact that even though they might have broke the law, they're still a victim. And how are we going to give them the resources to break that cycle and get out of it?
Thank you. Next question, beginning with Mr. Helene. What differentiating qualities distinguishes you from your opponent?
I would have to say leadership. When we talk about leadership, one of the things I'll tell you, and everybody understands when I put it into perspective for you, there's boss mentality versus leadership mentality. When we look at leadership and all the things that I've done in my career as well as my lifetime, I am a true leader. I have done things not necessarily for recognition, but I've done them over a series of times, repetitive behaviors to change the outcome or what I wanted. It's not that I necessarily made someone do it. And by changing the way a person thinks over a period of time, by slowly integrating things, that is leadership. I haven't crammed anything down anyone's throat. And I want people to understand that when we look at those types of qualities with the team leadership model as well, it makes me more approachable. And it makes people understand that you are that valued member of the team. So I understand what a valued member of a team is. Without a team, we're useless. And I need to be able to have the guys and gals who are out there who trust me, trust their fellow coworkers before they'll reach out and trust you as a citizen. And if they trust me, they trust their coworkers, they're going to reach out to you. And by doing those series of repetitive behaviors over and over and over again, those people will change the way that they behave, which ultimately change the climate and the character of the sheriff's office, which is what I and a lot of people want.
Thank you. Mr. Steen?
Well, first of all, I guess I would classify myself as kind of a relational leader. I like to develop relationships with the people that I work for or I work with. I do not like to consider myself to be their supervisor necessarily. I like to be a coworker, somebody that works with them and talks with them about, the different things that they're doing and their different assignments that they're working on. And I like to be able to communicate with them about, why we're doing what we're doing. And I also like to seek input from them. And I think that's one of the most important things, because I certainly don't have all the answers. And I know that the people that are working out in the field are seeing different things than I am. I'm not working out in the field anymore as much as I used to, obviously. So I seek input from them to better gauge how it is that what I can do to help them. So I consider myself to be a relational leader, almost a servant leader. I like to be there to help them do their job. And that's the best way to describe me, I guess. Thank you.
The next question, beginning with Mr. Steen. Latino members of our community express fear related to their immigration status. What would you do to build relationships with our Latino community so they feel safe calling for help or reporting crimes?
Well, first of all, I would tell anybody in the community, don't ever be afraid to contact the sheriff's office or to call 911 when they're a victim of a crime. We are going to respond and deal with whatever the crisis situation is. Our job when we get there is to investigate whether a crime has been committed or not. And so that's the primary thing, is that people understand that is what we do in law enforcement. If we get called somewhere, we determine whether a crime's been committed or not, and we investigate that crime. So that's the first thing we do. As far as reaching out to the Latino community, I think we do a lot of things in the community. As far as I sit on several different boards where I communicate with all different people in the community, and I think that the outreach that we have is there. It's just if people have questions, we need to make ourselves open to them. And I would be happy to come out and explain to people what it is that the sheriff's office does and why we do what we do. And as far as their concerns, I just think that they need to understand that we're here to help them. That's our primary purpose. And that's what our role is in law enforcement.
Thank you. Mr. O'Lean.
One of the things that I would do is an easy, free, effective way of doing things, what we call community walks. Get out with your command staff, get out with your employees, go into the communities that is highly Latino, Somali, etc. Reach out to the communities, talk to them. How can we better serve you? And not only that, create a police liaison position that is specific to those communities. Have a contact person so that they can reach out to that officer, address those concerns, and that officer can bring that back into the agency in and of itself, and express what those concerns, issues, or other things might be. The other thing too is we need to educate the general public on ICE enforcement. Understand locally, we don't have a whole lot that we can do enforcement-wise on ICE issues, and that is an ICE issue when they start issuing the detainers and holding those people. We have to abide by what the Supreme Court says. So I think what we have to do is also educate the general public so those fears and those walls are taken down. And once those walls are taken down, they're more likely to reach out to us. You know, I've done events at Cinco de Mayo as part of my business for judo and jiu-jitsu. And I've done those events for those community members. And I've also had the pleasure of meeting some of the people that I've dealt with on the law enforcement side come up to me and thank me for the way that I handled their case, even though that they were illegal at the time and now are citizens. And that's a matter of being educated as to what we can and cannot do.
Thank you. Question now beginning with Mr. Holeen. What are your values in running the county sheriff's department? What are your values?
I think some of the big things that we have is honesty and integrity. When we look at honesty, we have to be completely transparent. So when we look at the transparency, I look, one, to put my schedule on the webpage so everybody knows when I'm there. If I'm not there, chief deputy is going to be next in charge. If he's not there or she's not there, next one's going to be the captains. We got to be able to make ourselves transparent as to what's going on, as well as the media. The media is going to want to be reaching out to us, and they're going to have questions. And I have to be available or have a PIO, a public information officer, that can contact these people immediately to give them the answers that they want. So when we look at that honesty, that starts from the top down. And when we look at integrity, is always doing what we say that we're going to do. And if I am not doing what I promised you, I want you to point that out to me. I want people to hold me accountable. And that goes from employee to you, the citizen. If we're not holding our politicians accountable, what kind of system do we really have? And so those are the two big ones, honesty and integrity.
Thank you. Mr. Steen.
Okay, well, the first thing is that some of the values I have with running the sheriff's office is identifying what our goals are. And that is typically found through our mission statement and making sure that our staff understand what our mission statement is and what it is that we hope to accomplish each and every day. It's also about understanding what our responsibilities are in the sheriff's office. We have a great deal of responsibilities in the area of court security, dispatch, the 911 dispatch center, the jail staff, transporting. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that our sheriff's office is responsible for. So it's important for us to understand what our work is and how to go about doing that. The second thing is to be transparent. Like Eric said, it's very important to be very transparent with the public on what it is that we're doing. That's why I want the public to know exactly what the sheriff's office does on a daily basis and what the taxpayers' dollars are going towards. And so they have a better understanding of what we're doing. And the other thing is communication, good communication with various community groups. The sheriff's, between myself and the sheriff, we sit on several different groups in the community, whether it's the Safe Communities Coalition, the TEST group, which is the Traffic Education Safety Team, just to name a couple. We are very actively involved with the different organizations across the area and the county. And so I think it's just important to be very open and communicate with the public. And that's very important. And integrity, of course, is important as well.
Very good. Thank you. Probably our last question will be, I think, a very good closing question. What, in your opinion, is the greatest threat to public safety in our county's communities? And what do you see as the sheriff's role in mitigating that threat?
I'm going to try to limit it to one. I guess I would have to say right now, because this is something I'm very actively involved with, one of the biggest threats that I see right now, or that I'm very deeply involved with, is the fraud and scam cases that we're seeing in our community. Over the past couple of years, I mean, from 2017 to 2018, we are going to see our fraud cases double in Kansas County. Now, that includes all the law enforcement agencies. It's one of the reasons that we rolled out the initiative of TRIAD. TRIAD stands for Seniors, Law Enforcement, and Community Groups Working Together for Senior Safety. But the main fuel behind rolling out the TRIAD program is fraud and scams. And we have When we go to investigate these cases, we reach dead ends typically in most of them. And last year we had 170 cases between the departments. This year we're going to have probably 350. These cases are next to impossible to prosecute. I wouldn't say investigate, but prosecute. They really don't go anywhere. And we know full well that the balance of prevention and enforcement and prevention is way out of balance here. There's not much we can do with enforcement. So we know that we have to put a lot of emphasis on prevention, and that's what we're doing. That's why we're reaching out to the community, to the seniors. And it's not just seniors that are being taken in fraud cases. We've had people in our county taken for over $100,000. So it's very concerning to our community, or to the sheriff's office and law enforcement. We don't like to see what's happening.
Thank you. Mr. Helene.
Lack of service to the community. When we don't have service-oriented policing, we have barriers that get put up, and we need to get better at serving the community that we work for. And with that, if you look at why law enforcement is demonized nationwide, it's because the community doesn't understand law enforcement, and law enforcement also doesn't understand the community. And if we can open up those barriers and start talking to each other and hopefully make it a better place, as corny as that might sound. But what we're looking to do is build that good community relationships. With those good community relationships, all those other things come along with it. The Triad program, the fraud investigations. There's also more that we can do investigations-wise besides Triad when we start looking at fraud. There's stuff that we could better do to serve the community. And once we start opening those doors, we can explain to the community how big of a project this really is. And they can understand sometimes it takes a little bit of time to implement some of these programs. But we're going to try and get these done as fast and as effectively as possible.
Thank you. As we close to begin our closing remarks from both of you, I, on behalf of the league, certainly want to thank you for all that you have done in going about the community, the entire county, and also you went through the primary process as well. So you have been busy for many, many weeks. And thank you for your time tonight. We very much appreciate it. So does the community. Now, as we approach closing remarks, we will start with Mr. Helene for closing remarks. And you will have a minute.
All right. First off, thank you everyone for coming tonight, as well as the League of Minnesota Women Voters for hosting this. It's a pleasure always coming and being able to tell people where we come from and what we stand for. With that being said, Greg has been in different positions within the sheriff's office, captain of the jail, in charge of dispatch, as well as chief deputy. There's some programs that haven't been initiated under his watch, and I would like to see the opportunity given to someone else who will make it get it done. I've got to get it done mentality. I'm here to work for you, and I will get those programs done. And you won't hear me say, I've been working on it for 10 years, 8 years, etc. All right. Thank you for your time. Vote Eric Helene, November 6th. Appreciate your support.
Thank you. Mr. Steen.
Okay, first of all, I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight. So thank you for that. There are two things I want to leave you with. First, there is no question that the position of sheriff requires a great deal of experience and leadership skills. And over the course of my career, I have gained extensive knowledge in both of these areas. Second, the sheriff needs to have a strong commitment to the safety of the community and the employees. I have had the opportunity over my career to help build a safer community through enforcement and prevention efforts. I have also had the privilege of working with our staff to increase safety in the workplace through training and staff development programs. I am prepared to be your next sheriff, and I will lead the sheriff's office forward in a positive and ethical manner. I'm Greg Steen, and I would love to have your support on November 6th. Thank you so much.
As we close tonight, I certainly want to thank our audience. Thanks for your listening ear. I did not hear a cell phone go off. We appreciate that. RAC wants all of you to know that this program tonight, which is live, will be rebroadcast on demand on RAC and KWLM, as well as on the City of Wilmer Facebook. So please tell your friends and neighbors to find it. Again, it's rebroadcast on demand on RAC and KWLM, as well as the City of Wilmer Facebook. And as both of them said, please get out to vote on November 6th. Thanks for a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.